Thank you for joining us, everyone. A few persons have joined since we started. Welcome, one and all. And I was saying how happy I was to have joining the conversation today, our first conversation, Dr. Joan Pinkney, licensed counseling psychologist. And I was saying, welcome, Doc. Not often I get a chance to say, welcome, Doc.
Okay, then I receive it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Joan. So we're talking today about how we manage and deal with the challenges that have come about as a result of this pandemic. As Philippa mentioned, it's been 15 months on. Who would have thunk that 15 months on, we would still have been dealing with this pandemic and all that goes with that. And so today, our focus is on managing emotional and mental well-being. And my first question to you, Joan, is why well-being and not wellness? You hear a lot of talk about wellness, and then you hear about well-being. So tell us, what is the difference between wellness and well-being, and why aren't we going to be managing our mental wellness against our mental well-being?
Right. So wellness is a very important element of well-being. And so well-being encompasses not just one's mental health or physical health. So it's not just about how well you the exercise that you do or you keep fit and so on, but the focus expands greater to your family history, for example. What are some of the things that you're susceptible to? How do you deal, rather than just helping you to deal with a conflict that has transpired within a family setting or between yourself and someone, give you strategies or give you techniques of conflict management. So what well-being does is it looks more comprehensively at you, the individual. In fact, there are several employers, large employers around the world, who are engaging more into helping their employees to manage their well-being rather than just managing the wellness. And so, for example, they will help you with money management rather than just say to you, save. They will help you with money management. Yes, they may have a retirement policy in place, but they may help you to understand how you can navigate that process, not just financially, but also understanding what retirement means and what will you be doing when retirement comes. So it's a comprehensive look at the individual, at the person, not just to ensure that you eat right today, not just to ensure that you visit the doctor, but to look at your overall well-being, to look at your overall health, to look at your overall physical self, and ensure that you're getting that comprehensive. So for example, you may encourage persons spiritually. So spiritually speaking, yes, you say go to church and pray, but then is spirituality just about going to church and pray? No, it's about purpose. It's about understanding whether you are making an indelible mark in society, whether you're contributing to the development, not just of your own children, but of others. So it's really looking in a more comprehensive way at the individual person.
Thank you for that. That is very interesting because we hear a lot of talk about wellness, and you usually talk about exercising and making sure that you're eating right. And a lot of people are now into vegan and all of these various things, but it's a holistic approach then to
Absolutely.
how you are able to survive. It's looking at all elements of you as a man, as a woman, as a being, and all the various facets that go into making up who you are and how you manage how things impact those different facets.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
So if by way of definition, Carol, we could say that wellness is the sum of positive steps taken to lead to a healthier life. And the focus is really on prevention of disease and assessing your health as you go along. Well-being focuses on the holistic life experiences, being content and finding fulfillment in life. So the broader focus focuses on the mental and the emotional state, the social network, the spirituality, the job productivity, and just the overall contentment of the individual in as many as possible, or all of the areas of the individual's life.
Absolutely fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful. And so as we move then to talk about how our well-being, the whole person, has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, then we can talk now about how all of that, I mean, there was so much that has happened. How has that impacted or affected our well-being? What are some of the effects that are possible, that has happened, that could still happen resulting from COVID-19?
Well, the list is long, and perhaps we would need the entire day. Yeah. But apart from having several emotional, several physical, several psychological, spiritual, all these various areas of our life. So for example, within our family interactions, we have had to find ways to tolerate each other, for want of a better word, because we've been locked in, albeit that we are gingerly moving away from the total lockdown. But we do still have to contend with our family members in our space for long periods of time. And sometimes the relationship with our family wasn't all of that in the first instance, unfortunately. And so you now have to contend with your family in your space and to find ways that are creative to be able to survive with each other in that one space. So that in and of itself carries a whole long list of things. It has affected our fun. So a lot of us used to be able to go out and do stuff by ourselves or with other friends or even with our family members. But now we have to try to find creative means, and even know that the curfew restrictions are a little bit more relaxed, but we still have to be home by X time. And so you and I know that Jamaicans like to be out late, and we like to know that, boy, wee hours in the morning and we that. But all of that has been curtailed. And so you have to then find ways and means, creative ways, positive ways. The unfortunate thing is that in some instances, the ways that we have found to enjoy ourselves have not necessarily been positive in some family settings. And that, of course, has just pivoted into a whole host of other things. It has also affected the food. A lot of us, I clean my throat, a lot of us have gained weight because we have not been exercising as much, and we've been just eating the stuff that are there. And sometimes we're eating because we are depressed or because we feel some kind of depressive symptoms. And so that's almost like a way of helping us to cope. A way of coping mechanism. It has also affected our faith. Some of us have not been able to physically go to church, well, most of us. And as a result of that, some of us have felt isolated. Some persons have so the effects have not all been bad, because some persons have grown greater, stronger in their faith because they like the online thing and they're into online a lot. And separate and apart from that, they have found the time to spend more time in prayer and talking to their maker. So we could run the list. Finances too is a big one, because a number of us have either had to cut hours from our jobs, or some of us have lost our jobs. Those in particular industries, the flow of activities has been curtailed. And that, of course, was our main way of earning. And I'm thinking of some of our affiliates, for example, where they depended on certain things to be able to survive. And some of those streams have been either curtailed or in some instances blocked totally. So we're broke. We are, according to the little 5-year-old, we are break. Yeah, the money flow has been very slow in coming, and in some instances the flow stream has literally stopped. So it has really been negative in a lot of instances, but we can look at some of the positives as well, because the family interactions for some persons has been better. We have found creative ways of having fun. We have lit the flame, the intimacy flame, in a greater way, and so it burning up, yeah. And in some cases, the faith has gotten stronger, because sometimes, and Jamaicans are very resilient in and of themselves, and because in the midst of um, um, Gilbert, in the midst of all the various disasters that we have encountered, we have come together. It's amazing. We come together and we fight together until when we're good, then we start to fight again. Yeah. But there are some positives as well. And some persons have actually, jobs have been born out of the COVID experience for some persons. So whilst there have been a lot of negatives, and it has affected us physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and otherwise, there has been some good things that have come out of it in that way.
Great. And it is you mentioned the word resilience, and we'll come back to that word again, but it speaks to who we are as Jamaicans, doesn't it? We always find a way to get through, whether we're going to knock the mountain down, or we're going to hollow out a hole in it, or we're going to go around it or go underneath it, but we have to find a way to survive. And many of us, we try and would prefer, despite all that is happening, we might prefer to see the proverbial glass as being half full, and try to find the good that may be there, rather than than dwelling on the not so goods. So that is something inherent in us. But and sometimes too, it may mean that persons may think that, oh, she looks okay and she seems fine, but nobody knows what's going on behind, because sometimes you may not spread the linen out on the line for all to see, but you're suffering. And so even before COVID came, you may have been having challenges, and COVID has now come and amplified those challenges. And we see a lot, we hear the reports, and there's the anecdotal evidence about the results of COVID on the emotional and mental state. And many persons have seemingly not been able to deal with that. But a little bit more then about what are some of the emotional and mental effects of COVID, of the COVID-19 pandemic? How may these manifest themselves?
Well, there are two that I'd like to focus on, given our time circumstances, our time situation. And these can really block or any kind of positive way forward. One is negative thoughts, and the other one is fear. Well, two, fear and anxiety. Negative thoughts will block us. I mean, if we sit and think about what is happening and listen to the negative news, we hear our negative friends, we look at our negative bank account, we look at all of those things, so they are just going to contribute to the negative thoughts, the feelings of hopelessness, the feelings of helplessness. And the thing about negative thoughts is that they are repetitive. They tend to stay with us, and they can cause all other unpleasant emotions, such as anxiety and fear and stress, depression, shame, unworthiness, and the list goes on. But one of the things that I want to remind us is that thoughts are not necessarily our thoughts until we embrace them. So we have what I call fields of information. So you will hear in the news, you'll hear from your neighbor next door, you'll hear in a song, or you'll hear from different avenues, various things that are being said, and they come to your mind, they come into your thoughts. When they come to your thoughts, you determine what you will embrace. Now, if you've been the kind who has been generally focused on the negatives, it's very easy to just go there. And we see everything that is not going well rather than what is going well. So when something happens, for example, if you're someone who dwells on the negative a lot, when something happens, the first thing you think about is the bad in the thing. if you're somebody who thinks positively, you will likely want to go to some of the positives that relate to that particular thing. So it's for us to examine our own selves and to say, what do I think of first? Do I go to the negative first? And why do I go to the negative first? And you may need to have a conversation with me to help you to identify that. But apart from recognizing that the thoughts that come to you don't belong to you necessarily, or are not yours until you entertain them and begin to repeat them in your mind, then they become your thoughts. But you can then identify those that are self-destructive. So the ones that don't really carry you, that don't really offer any positive way of going forward. And also to be able to know what are the triggers of those self-destructive and those negative thoughts. And sometimes they're individuals. And you're not gonna malice or turn your back on people, but some persons, all they focus on, Carol, are things that are bad. Those persons, you kind of don't need a lot of them in your life. You need the ones who see the sun shining. You need the ones who see that you can speak. You need the ones who are able to focus on things that are positive. And I'm not saying that we should not be mindful of the negative things around us. But if all we think about, because remember now, stress is triggered by all of those negatives. And stress hormones are evoked or are produced once we dwell on those things that are negative. And those stress hormones can be damaging to our internal, damaging to us generally, and keep us at a place until it pivots into burnout and it pivots into causing us all kinds of illnesses. And research shows that stress in and of itself is the root cause or the initial cause of a lot of the mental and physical illnesses that we encounter. So watch out for irrational reasoning. Ask yourself, where are we going with this? I mean, what does this make sense? Because sometimes we're so wrapped up into the negatives that we don't realize that what we're thinking about and what we're embracing does not equate to positive. So replace those negative thoughts with thoughts that are uplifting. The other thing that I wanted to focus on is fear and anxiety. Now, fear is an emotional response to a known threat. And we're born with the ability to identify fear. So we are going to respond. A child, for example, is born with the ability to, he or she hears a noise. And the fear factor or the component within that they're built into the child, you're going to cry, you're going to scream out. And the response indicates to us as parents or caregivers that something is wrong. And associated with fear is anxiety. Anxiety is in an unpleasant, unclear sense of uneasiness. And it's often a response to a known or an unknown threat. So fear and anxiety usually go together. And very often when we're not sure what is going to happen, we're not sure what will take place and how it's going to happen, we get into these various these states. So we have the sweating of cold sweats and the irregular heart beating and the dizziness and the shaking and difficulty concentrating, and we have loose bowels and we can't sleep. All these and more symptoms are offshoots of fear and anxiety. But I want to suggest that we have to recognize that these various things in life are normal. Yeah, these will happen. And so whether it's a COVID or whether it is whatever else, an illness that you may be facing or someone may be facing, or as basic as a job interview, yeah, you have to recognize that you're going to deal with it. You have to deal with it. And allowing the fear and the anxiety to overcome you is futile. So face what it is that you have to deal with. Identify what it is and face it, and say to yourself, what do I have in my control? So if it is the interviewee or interviewer, you don't have any control over what they're going to ask you, but you do have control over what you're going to say. And so you now need to say, what do I need to do in order to respond properly? And one of the things is that when you're asked a question, take a minute to pause and collect your thoughts. Nobody can tell you that you can't pause. Pause, collect your thoughts. So I'm saying that you have to face what it is that's there. So there's COVID, there, whatever else, you have to say to yourself, what do I need to do to be able to confront this issue? Because it's a part of life. I can't circumvent. Going under the carpet is not going to solve the issue. And so facing it and recognize the necessity of it. Another thing I want to highlight before I hand back to you is self-care. Because it's very important that even as we face and we recognize all these various things that are happening around us, is that we take care of ourselves, our hygiene, that we strive to sleep, that we do some exercise, that we breathe, that we laugh, that we talk to our friend, that we encourage someone. All this is part of self-care, because what we're doing is that we're encouraging positive vibes into our system. When we call someone and just say, hi, how you doing? You really don't really need to have any reason of such to call, but just to encourage someone and just to say, how you doing? What that does is that it causes those positive fuzzy hormones to be produced when you do those positive things, and then they will help you with your own well-being and care. We could say more, but I'll hand back over to you.
Okay, but those are some interesting points you've made there, though, Joan, because a lot of it resides in ourselves, but it's trying to harness what is required for us to get above and beyond those challenges that have presented themselves. And whilst we're trying to do this, whilst we're doing the callings to the friends and the neighbors and the family members whom we haven't spoken to or we haven't seen for a long time, and whilst we're making those reconnections, those connections which have been broken because of COVID, there are some things also I think that we could do to not carry us too far down that road of unwell-being, if there's such a word, because there are those behaviors that we can indulge in, which would prevent us from going further along that road. So, for example, someone mentioned in the chat earlier about disconnecting and just totally, as you say, you're not going to malice and all of that, but sometimes you might feel you have to just cut some things off in order to get a hold of your space, your mental space, and just being able to focus on what you need to focus on at this point in time in order to be better. And so could you tell us a little bit more then of some other behaviors? So disconnecting, as one of our guests said, is indeed correct. Some of the other behaviors that we might find ourselves indulging in, which could be effectively blocking our efforts from managing, better managing our mental well-being.
Well, certainly the thought process is a big one, as we mentioned. But as you said, the way we engage with persons, so the things that we allow ourselves to listen to, so for example, the news. Nothing is wrong with listening to the news and catch up on it and so on. Someone said to me that they don't need to listen to the news because their friends on social media keep them up to date.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes. So you listening to the news is important because we need to know what's happening generally within our society. But being slavishly connected to it is not a good thing, because a lot of times it is all bad news. And so we need to recognize that all of that will just sink us deeper. We also, as you said, we may need to chop off the hand of some of the friends that we have and recognize that these persons really need help, but you're not the one to necessarily help them. And so you need to say, perhaps you can say to them, look, hey, I realize that you're very negative, and I really have an issue with that, because what your negativity is doing to me is causing me to feel this way or that way. A very big one, Carol, is to practice gratitude.
Oh, yes.
Practice gratitude is very, very important, because sometimes we look only on what we don't have. Mm-hmm. We look only on what we would like to get and what everybody else has and so on. And whilst that is good in terms of growth and development, we need to also recognize that we have a lot. So looking at ourselves and saying, wow, I woke up this morning, I can see I woke up this morning, look at the sunshine. What are some of the things that I can be thankful for? And not just to be thankful to the higher power, but also to be thankful to each other. So being thankful to you by saying, good, you called and you checked upon me, and you don't just begin to lodge into, Lord, this is happening, Lord, but you begin to express appreciation that you took the time to look up for my number and to dial it and to call me and to speak to me. No, that is something to be thankful for. And just practice being thankful for persons giving you a glass of water, persons reaching out to you in any way, but just expressing thanks. I challenged a group of young people recently that they should call a few persons in their life and just say thank you. And they're like, huh? Yes. And said, thank you for being there for me. Thank you for paying my school fees. Thank you for providing for me when I needed someone to listen to me. And they actually said that they never really thought about it. And one of them called me one away and said, it is amazing how he felt having done that. And now he says, being thankful is something that he continues to do. Right. So those are some of the things that I want to suggest. I think I see a question that's coming in.
And as Coffee says, gratitude is a must, right?
Gratitude is a must.
Gratitude is a must, and you're right. It is a big part. Gratitude, being grateful, being thankful, being appreciative to the higher being, to the Creator, and all He does to provide and sustain us, and all of that. Crucial, critical, cannot overemphasize it. But we also need to I agree with you, to take the time just to remember to say thanks to our neighbors. For somebody, it may seemingly a small thing, but to them, just the act of saying thanks is huge and does a lot for them, because then they feel that they're contributing and that they have done something which is worthwhile, and their life is improved, and their own mental state and well-being is also improved.
I want to add before you move on, Carol, finding meaning and purpose in life. Because very often we tend to feel that I'm just here, that nobody is just here. We're all here for a purpose, and it is our sole responsibility. Well, not sole, because you can have other persons who assist as well. But it's our responsibility as individuals, as adults, to try to find, why am I here? What can I contribute? Not just for my own growth and my own development, but to extend ourselves to others and to do what it is that we can do. What is yes, we may have a profession, but is that contributing sufficiently? Yes, I'm earning from it, I have a fat bank account or whatever, but how much has that contributed to someone's life? So what is the meaning? What is the purpose of my life? And how can I say, yes, I have done this, I am doing this. And if I'm not doing it, what do I need to do? So we encourage persons to volunteer. We encourage persons to pass on their skills to the next generation. We encourage persons to say, how in my own profession or my own vocation can I bless somebody? What can I do in that regard? So tangible things, which shows that I'm not just here because my mother and my father had a wonderful relationship, or I was a buck-up, and nobody's a oops. We're all here because God desired for us to be here, yeah? And so recognizing that, but also establishing and making an effort to find out, why am I here and how can I fulfill that purpose? And I think this time of lockdown is a good time to reflect on that. And absolutely, and to find out what is it that I can do. And because if you're not careful, you stay in the pity party, the poor me, but we need to close down the party. I mean, Prime Minister has kind of said that too, but we need to close down the pity party. And yes, there is a place for that, but we should not allow ourselves to be going around in a milieu and a circle every day and just pour me. We need to snap out of it. And that's where the resilience come in, and recognize that we have a purpose here. What is that purpose? And am I fulfilling that purpose in an effective way?
Wonderful, wonderful. And we're winding down, could you then, you've given us some pointers there, volunteering, for example, which is important, passing on what we know, skills and otherwise, to the next generation, or just to somebody who can use that information to uplift themselves and to help them to feel grounded and better about themselves. You talk about disconnection, finding our purpose, all of that. Are there any other pointers that you could give us in helping us to achieve this emotional and mental well-being that we are craving for? What are some other things that you would want to leave with us as we wind down?
Well, from an emotional perspective, because we're just focusing on the mental aspect, the psychological aspect of our well-being. But from an emotional perspective, there's a big one, Carol, that sometimes we don't recognize how impactful it can be. And it starts with a U and ends with an S, unforgiveness. And you may say, what has that got to do with crisis? What has that got to do with COVID? But it really has a lot to do with it. It really has a lot to do with our state, our emotional state, how we process things, how we view other persons, whether we let go of stuff that are there, or whether we continue to hold it, as we say in Jamaican parlance, in our crop. Whether we hold it, and so on, and feel that we really have to keep it up because this person has hurt us so much. And it's a nerve that a lot of persons struggle with. And every time I touch it in conversation, persons say, boy, it's very hard. But it really, unforgiveness as leads into stress, and stress, of course, has all of those negatives that we spoke about. But unforgiveness really is saying to someone, you have done me wrong, but I am staying in the cell that you should be in. You have committed the crime, so we're choosing to stay trapped in the jail cell of bitterness and serving the time for someone else who has committed the crime. And so we need to recognize how toxic unforgiveness is. And so it can inhibit our ability to cope generally in crisis. It can inhibit our ability to just be able, because it's in a crisis, you cannot successfully navigate your way without other persons there for you. And so it may mean being vulnerable, persons seeing you at your worst. And so sometimes if we hold on to this status, which sometimes unforgiveness carries, because we don't want to show that, hey, I am lowering my guard to say to you, it's okay, what you did to me, I'm letting it go. We want to still hold the power, we want to still hold the reign, and to show that we are the one and we are the one. And so not recognizing that what that is doing is accumulating all of those negatives in our hearts, in our souls, in our minds, and so on, and really causing negative impacts, not just on ourselves, but also on other relationships. And so one of the things that I want to suggest very strongly, that we seek to forgive, that we seek to let go. It is not easy. It has to start with a decision, because forgiveness is not, and persons would say, boy, I will forgive him for that, but I'm not forgiving him for that because of what it is. But really, it really hurts you. I tell you a story about a young lady who, a friend of hers, more or less stole her boyfriend. Of course, the guy to be blamed as well. And so they had a big thing, and the guy, and they were together, her friend and the guy were together for a while until they broke up. And so she was really hurtable. The friend called her to apologize. She would not have it, because she thought that it was just something that was just not, you just don't forgive someone for that. And so the guy also called and begged forgiveness, and she didn't. And so what she found was that she wasn't having the kind of friendship that she wanted to have over the years. but she really never took it on. She just said that that's how she was. About 5 years later, she went to the States and she was in a mall and she was waiting on a ride. And she said she looked across and saw her friend and she pretty much looked the same way. But then she saw her and a man came across at her. And of course, when she saw her, the hurt and the pain just was up again, and she was thinking about what she did to her. And the man came across and hugged her. And when she looked at her finger, she saw a ring. And then she saw some children coming and she saw them laughing and she saw that they were happy. And it hit her that for these 5 years, she has been so miserable. And there it is that her friend was happy and she was miserable. And she realized that what that was that she did that to herself. That she decided that she was not going to forgive. And of course, she checked herself into therapy to be able to rid of all of those emotional things, negative things that were there. So I'm saying that to say that sometimes we're holding persons and keeping them at ransom, and they have moved on with their life. So we need to recognize that we need to let go of that and forgive the person. It doesn't mean that if you forgive the person and the person's behavior has not changed toward it, that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable to this person. No, you have to be wise and you have to manage it. Of course, there's a thin line between managing that, because sometimes you end up being resentful. But suffice it to say that you have to be careful and you have to let go. So unforgiveness can really be a major blocker. So we need to recognize the importance to tune into our thoughts and tune into our feelings, and don't deny how we feel. If this is how we feel, speak of it. Speak of the negative emotions. We can journal. You can journal those negative thoughts, or if you have a friend you can talk with, you can share that these are the negative feelings that I'm having. So it's important to express them. When we express them, we release ourselves of the energy that is behind them. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid for someone to see you at that lowest. Of course, it has to be someone you trust, but don't be afraid for someone to see you, that you are sad, that you're hurting, and so on. And practice the stress techniques. The stress techniques will help you to let go of some of those emotions. And one of them is crying. One of them is just bawling, just saying that this is how you feel, and allow that period of energy behind those emotions to go. And then again, it may well up again another time, but as you go through, don't suppress it. That's the point I'm making. Don't suppress it. Laugh, play, do things that are positive with your friends and laugh. Keep a face that is inviting. And sometimes when persons look at us and say, Lord have mercy, just look at him face, So we need to keep a face that is inviting and laugh. Laugh sometimes even when you don't really have a joke, because what laughing does is that it evokes positive chemicals, because the brain does not know that you didn't get a joke necessarily. But once the behavior, the action it mimics laughter, the positive, the fuzzy hormones that we know about, they are produced and they will make us feel good about ourselves.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. This is such an interesting conversation. Wish we had time to delve into it some more. But unforgiveness is a really, really critical element that we have, and it's hard. As you said, Joan, it is hard. Very hard. When you sometimes think about what somebody has done to you and how much what that action did to you and how negative it was, and all the things that might have flowed from that particular action. It's hard. It is
hard. And sometimes we don't really readily see the connection between that and other things that are happening in our lives. But we are a comprehensive being and we're all connected, our emotions and all the various things about us are connected. And so it will impact on how we treat with matters of crisis, of matters when like a COVID or whatever, how we generally respond because of what is already there in our systems.
And that story you shared with us is a powerful story too. Just recognizing that you are the person hugging up this thing. You are the person holding on to it for dear life while the other person has moved on and perhaps even forgotten the actor. They've forgotten it and moved on and gone and is enjoying life. That was a really, really powerful story that really emphasizes the need and why we really need to let go of these things and not, as you say, hug them up in the car and let you go at all. Let you go at all. Right. Before I ask you for any final comments, I'm going to look in the chat. There was a question by Tasha. I hope I got your name correctly, Miss Tasha. I'm just going back up to see the question here. What if a person is in denial? This was talking about those persons whom come to us and we just need to cut off some people because them just toxic and it just a go on and them not get it, say, them a pull you down too. What if a person is in denial to the fact that they need help, but you see it as harmful to them as the day progresses and them that's not taking it on, that they need help? How do you treat with that?
Well, the fact is that you can't help someone who doesn't see that they need to be helped. And that's one of the things that as counselors and psychologists in training, you learn very early up, because you kind of felt that you were the rescuer and that you were to be there for everybody, and everybody who come, you're ready to deal with them and to work with them. But there are persons who, even though they come into counseling, even though they solicit your services, they already come with a preconditioned mind as to how it's going to go. So those persons, I remember having said to someone, you know, okay, so are you going to tell me what I need to tell you? Because clearly you have come with your own preconceived ideas as to how the counseling should go. And so everything that you make as suggestion, as you lay out in a plan, they either see some problem with it, but really what it is really fear of being vulnerable, fear of the unknown. And so eventually I had to help that person to chip, and they had to come to grips and say, look, no, I really came because this is exactly why I need your help, because I tend to want to be the one to put everything in place, and I need to know how to step back. And so it took a while, but we had to take and to chip away. So you do have some persons who come, they recognize it and they realize that they have an issue and they are willing, and over time they will. But there are some who block you and they say, look, nothing is wrong with me, whatever, and they just don't want to. But it really is because they are fearful. And so if you know how to pray, you can pray for them. You just be positive to them, show them that there is another way, a better way, and just demonstrate that, showing empathy, showing positive regard to them, so that they don't feel as if you're pushing them away. But if someone locks their mind into not wanting help, you really can't help them.
Yeah, you can't help who doesn't want help. Yeah,
want to be helped. I wanted to say something, Carol, about resilience, because resilience is the core strength of how we can carry our load. Resilience is a core strength of how we can carry our load. It is what helps us to go through life, and is like building a muscle. Building resilience takes time and has to be intentional. And there are 4 things that I want to just say that every time I think of the word resilience, I think of our Jamaican women.
Bounce back.
We know how to bounce back. And we're not talking about ball now, because after the ball bounce, it gone all over the place. We're talking about knowing how to, stay crooked and cut straight. We know how to turn with hand and make fashion. We know how to ball through the issues of childbearing, I mean, most women. And even though it is there, and when the doctor is saying push, we cannot not push because of all of the urgency that needs to be attended to with the child coming. And if we don't push, we know that what the repercussions and so on will be. And so I also think about the little engine that everybody else the big engine going fast and going shoop, zoop, 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 zoop. But this little train with this little engine took its time and went over the hill. And then after a while, it realized that some of the things, the ones that zoops past him were stuck. All that it took was that it took its time. Now, I'm not saying that everything you do has to be slowly done and timely and so on, because some things we have to do, have to think on our feet. But the whole idea is that we don't give up. Is that we recognize that we think healthily, entertain those positive thoughts, and we say to ourselves, okay, this happened to me. How can I negotiate this and go forward? Practice self-care is very important as we seek to be resilient, to practice self-care, to look after ourselves, to build connections. We can't do it alone. So even if we have that inner strength as that little engine, we still have to look at our associations, those persons who will uplift us. And as we said earlier on, find sound meaning. It's very important for us. So these 4 things are very important as we seek to build resilience. We have to think healthily, embrace healthy thoughts, embrace our well-being by practicing self-care, associate with positive persons and positive connections, prioritize our relationships and things that are well worth embracing, and find sound meaning, help others. And in the midst of finding meaning, that we express gratitude. So resilience is important. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel down. You will. You will feel down. In fact, if a person says they don't feel down, then they are actually lying. You will feel down. You will feel discouraged. But after that bout of discouragement, you pick yourself up again. And that is resilience. I mean, have you ever think about getting an assignment to do, or even your examination that you may have to do, and you say to yourself, boy, I don't think I can do this. But you say to yourself, I'm going to study, and you go into the exam, and you do the exam. You come out of the exam. Sometimes you don't feel as good. Sometimes you don't feel as well. But then even if you fail the exam, because your end result is the degree or the diploma or to finish this course, you go at it again. All of those are demonstrations of resilience. And I believe that everybody has it within them. Some persons don't bring it up enough. Some persons don't utilize it enough, but I believe that we all have that inner strength that we can pull on to make us good. Of course, those of us who believe in God and know that his strength is perfect when our strength fails. So when we know that it's not working and we feel like we can't go, as this famous affiliate always said, well, God, he calls on God. And he, of course, is our ultimate strength and our ultimate source. And we don't have to apologize to do that, because we know that God is the ultimate source and he will give us additional energy to build on our resilience. But we have to do our part in order to go through these difficult times. It's not easy, Carol. It is not easy, but it is possible.
Preach, Dr. Pinckney, preach.
Yes.
Preach it. Yes.
The word of the Lord.
Amen. Yes. The time gonna come, you're going to wallow a bit and you're going to wallow in it and you wallow. But after the wallowness and the wallowing done, then you have to remember that there is a higher power and God will take care of you.
Amen.
He promised, and he is true to his promises. Thank you so much, Dr. Pinckney. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
For sharing these thoughts with us and helping us to just reconnect and just to remember that the strength lies within us because it comes from God, and we can find the will, power to bounce back and to be resilient. To find what we need to empower ourselves and to be able to withstand all the challenges that comes to us as a result of COVID and other things. Because as I said before, the challenges were there before COVID. COVID just amplifies many of them. And after COVID finished, going on 15 months and things, but it must finish one day. And when we get to that point, we shall stand. Thank you again so much for joining us for this conversation, Dr. Pinckney.
Thank you for having me.
Our moderator, Philippa.
Yes, well, thank you again, Carol, for your interviewing, and for Dr. Pinckney for your responses. For the short time, it really has been a very deep and wide understanding, exposition, and understanding of well-being. And we're thankful for all that you've shared with us today. From the chat, you can see the commendations and expressions of thanks, and glad to know that there are persons who are leaving feeling uplifted and empowered and being affirmed to know that they are resilient. So our thanks so much to you and our affiliates. Thank you for attending. And as we said, this is the first in a series, so do look out for notifications of upcoming discussions, upcoming conversations, as we seek to empower you as creatives, but also as our fellow Jamaican citizens. So thank you, everyone. Do have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.